I'll find out what that means.
Francois, how are you? Which part of the world are you in today?
I am in Jersey City and spring is finally here. How about you?
I'm in Seattle. It always rains. There's no point asking me ever what the weather is like. I mean, you've been at AWS. If you've been to Seattle once, you've been to it every day. It rains every time.
Yeah, you don't need a ML model to figure that out.
No, you don't. But it's good to talk to you again. I know that we crossed paths when we were at AWS, and now you're a field CTO, which I think is also a very, very good thing. I wanted to talk a little bit about just AI in general, but before that, give us a little bit of a bigger background, a longer background to yourself, what you did at AWS, the new role that you're at, and just things that you have been doing over the last couple of years.
Yes, so without going back too far, I've been up and down the stack. I spent a lot of time in application layer. I did some observability back in the day, like 15 years ago. I spent time in microservices and platforms, Kubernetes. And at AWS, I went into analytics and, I had done big data before as well. So I've been pretty much all over the map. And my good friend Arnie Ragvender, Arnie at AWS introduced me to GenAI while I was there.
Yeah.
And I really got the bug. So I was doing, data analytics and machine learning, and then transition into Gen AI go-to-market while at AWS. I was working with, large financial institutions there.
Awesome. Tell me a little bit about observability versus monitoring. So just to give you a little bit of context, back in 2001 to 2006, almost 2007, yeah, I was at a company called Mercury Interactive, which then became HP. It was at HP for a little bit. We used to do application monitoring. Now,
Yeah.
application monitoring was just take a production system, make sure that you monitor it for uptime, availability, performance, maybe root cause analysis if things break. But observability is more of a developer-oriented DevOps kind of a solution. Walk us through what are the differences that you see observability versus monitoring.
Yeah, I mean, the industry is very good at reinventing old concepts, right? And so there's I'm not a theorist about, observability versus monitoring, but to me, what it means is really exposing more telemetry out of your applications, right? So observability came around the same time where, what I was doing back in 2010 was one of the early transaction tracing solutions. So today we call those spans, and we've got, the different products that came up around that time, like Dynatrace,
Yeah,
and it was really like trying to get away from just monitoring infrastructure and then, more into observing applications, right? And we sold to people that cared about application uptime, latency, user experience. And as the world shifted to, microservices and dynamic cloud environments, the need for observability just increased more and more, right? And as everybody, today lives online and with mobile applications, the user experience, really matters quite a bit. And so, to me, observability was just adapting to the times where, we went very distributed, dynamic microservices. You need something to kind of put everything together in a diagram that shows you the dependencies and where things are going wrong. And so it's just more metrics, more logs, more traces, bringing together, in order to support the business. So that's how I would position it.
yeah. I think the interesting part I've seen, right, Murat also was telling me about it when I was speaking to him about an hour ago. He and I worked when we were at HP together. It's almost as if developers, we talked about DevOps, they wanted to literally remove that gap between developers, throw it over the wall, they give it to operations guys, they run it. Those guys use monitoring. Developers are like, yeah, we just worry about these things. They depended on the testing. But now that whole chain has collapsed. So I remember when I was at Amazon, we would get level one, level two severity called directly to developers. There was no filter. It's like they would just go directly to developers. Then they're like, what the hell is wrong? What is going on? So that's the telemetry part, which they have to put into the product to be able to visualize it and look. We used to do logs, we used to do traces, we used to do all of the usual stuff. But I think the fact that developers got involved, they said, we don't want to call this monitoring. Monitoring is for the ops people. We're going to call it observability. Sounds more classy, sounds more DevOpsy. We can charge more for the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically all in service of agility, right? Like all the things that have happened. I mentioned, we keep reinventing old concepts. To me, there are new concepts that have been really revolutionizing how we build things. And it's tied around this kind of idea of DevOps. You could argue it started with extreme programming in the 90s, but this whole wave of change has launched many technologies that kind of fit together. And it's all in support of agility and, speed to market and building great products very quickly in an agile, iterative manner. So, you have platforms and cloud and, I was in the Kubernetes or PaaS, CI/CD. It's all in service of this new way of working where, and observability fits into that wave of change as well, so that we can all move faster. But the problem is that, what we're seeing is, you know, I made a joke about, the expression, man plans and God laughs.
Yeah,
Well, when SREs planned this whole like, yeah, we're gonna automate and we created Kubernetes, we created all these things. So when SREs plan, the software gods laugh with quite a sick sense of humor. And so, because right now SREs are back to handling, and inundated with data, right? We created all these tools and automation, and it's just gotten more and more complex. And we're back to fighting, the wall of red alerts on our dashboards. And we've come full circle. We've created a lot of agility, and then those developers use that agility to create even more applications and more microservices and more data. And now, we're back to like, oh my God, how do I handle this? So that's
yeah,
really where Newbird is trying to address this problem with Gen AI.
yeah. Tell me something. How does generative AI change observability? Now, I'm going to set a little bit of context at least. So you had monitoring, which was production applications done by operations. Then you had developers that had to start looking at it. They looked at new technologies and new ways of building applications, like you said, agile methodology, microservices, each team responsible for a component or a small set of components. They wanted more observability. They wanted more telemetrics to be able to monitor the applications. All this happened. And then generative AI has come about. Now, there are multiple ways by which generative AI, I think, affects the the quality, uptime, performance of applications, and the architecture patterns also, I think, change, right? So let's assume, for example, now I have an application that depends on an LLM at the back end, depending on the LLM, whether it's I use Claude as an API or any of the others, or go to Hugging Face and I deploy a model, or I go to Amazon AWS and I use their mechanism to use any model. How does observability change in the context of generative AI?
Yeah, so I mean, all observability vendors, have many solutions, right? They have security monitoring, they have ML ops kind of solutions, they have application monitoring, network monitoring, yeah. And now, you need to monitor these new LLMs, and there's a lot of aspects of, what you need to monitor when you're dealing with LLMs, like are they acting in a safe manner? Are they costing too much? Who's using it for what purpose? So there's a lot of, and it's just a new application component, right? So now you've got Bedrock in your architecture, and it's just yet another thing you need to monitor and be aware of. But I don't think it's it's change. It's just new needs, right? That the same observability tools are meeting, and there's maybe some specializations, and those tools are great at kind of creating those kind of very specific dashboards, like what metrics matter when you're trying to monitor LLM usage, right? Like how do you go and have explainability? Maybe that's a new need, right? Like how do you factor that in? And maybe that's something that the observability tools need to address. Our angle is very, very different, right? So we're not an observability platform, and we're here to use AI to help these SREs that now have, more workload than anybody ever had, right? And, to your point, like developers are supposed to use observability to solve their own problems, and then DevOps, well, none of those guys want to be on call, right? So there's somebody on call. And guess what? We're still getting on these kind of war room, or maybe the war room is virtual now, and we're all jumping on a Zoom, and we're certainly on Slack, and having to deal with these channels that set up for incident resolution. And so, our view is that you know, all these people need the data in context of this particular event that's occurring, and the data that's needed needs to be understood and explained, not just provided like, oh, here's 20 dashboards and a million kind of metrics that you can look at. So we've created so much data through these telemetry solutions, and even like the application traces, they're very useful, but it's kind of very difficult to get, what you want out of that. Plus, because it's never just the application. You find something, and then inevitably you have to go look at network, you have to go look across multiple tools, multiple dashboards, and kind of that's what we're seeing as the need that we want to use AI for is how do we automate this process of getting all the right data and making those connections and explaining what is going on so that when humans get involved, there's no need to bring in everybody on a war room call or a group chat and go look at five different monitoring systems and piece it all together. It's all kind of explained, and the level one kind of on call first responder is the AI agent, right? Hawkeye is the name of our agent, and so that's kind of the vision.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about, let's switch gears a little bit. Tell me about how you use AI. That was one of the conversations we had last
Yeah.
time around when we wanted to talk about, right? So we understood now how you help SREs and site reliability engineers use AI. How are you using AI and what has it changed? I know you said you use it for content because you also do one part of your job is product marketing, one part of your job is evangelism, one part of your job is wearing all the hats together. But how has it changed your role?
Yeah, I mean, I just compare it to like having superpowers already all of a sudden, right? And it's really I do all the same things except I'm 10 times more productive. And so I use it across the board. Like I'm more I'm coding more than I have in years because I got so fed up with coding. I used to be extremely technical. I started as engineering and then consulting and then pre-sales. And at some point I became more of a sales person than a kind of a true engineer. And it was really just because it's just exhausting
Yeah,
to code, right? Deal with all the issues. There's
totally.
so many dependencies. There's just so much you need to know. And now with AI at your fingertips, it's absolutely amazing how productive you can be and how fast you can get through problems if you just know how to leverage it, right? So it's to me, it's like, how do I use AI is I use it across the board, but more importantly, my approach to using AI is, having like AI is a superpower, but it can only be unlocked by questions, just like pretty much everything else in life. In your uh, work that you're doing right now, right? Having great conversations is about having the right questions, and same thing in the sales or relationships. With AI, it's no different, and you really have to kind of understand how AI works and what you want to do, and you have to have the plan, right? Like, and you can even ask the AI to help you with that plan, but you have to have this kind of approach of, building chains of AI, right? Like, I never go and straight up ask, hey, do this, right? I start by asking, hey, if I wanted to do this, what would be a good way to prompt you to do that, right? So that's kind of a better approach, or
Yeah,
always ask AI to ask you questions. Because the AI tends to just like barrel down some kind of theory of what you want and like just produce like massive amounts of
yeah,
uh,
yeah,
content, right? But it's a very like to me, it's all about the questions, and it's really about getting the AI to ask the questions, and that becomes a very powerful thing. So again, that's a long-winded answer, and it's because I mean, I use AI. I cannot do anything really without AI in my day-to-day job. I'm more productive at pretty much everything, except
yeah.
I need to be here and have this conversation with you. Of course, I can't use AI for that.
The interesting part is um, over the last, so I tell you an interesting conversation I had with a friend of mine. His name is Anchit. Anchit is in Toronto, Canada, and he has built a training engine for LLM using Google spreadsheets. So it's not fancy. He is a non-technical guy. He's a marketing guy. And so what he does is he's got some input prompts, he's got some system prompts, and he's got some output channels. So what he says to the LLM is take these input prompts, use them with these system prompts, and generate me an answer that looks like this. So he's literally training the LLM, telling it, take all of this, use this context, and his context windows are large, they're not small. His context windows sometimes are, I used to, before I talked to him, my prompts would be 3, 4 sentences at max. Now I've up to almost about 2 paragraphs. When I tell an LLM, this is what I want, I usually structure it a lot more, then I refine it. This guy's prompts are pages, Francois, pages. He writes an entire page without LLM to create a prompt saying, "This is exactly what I want. Don't give me anything more. Don't give me anything less." So I looked at his entire system. I saw what he did, and I think that's just creating content at scale. But I'm not really sure if the thing I was asking him was, how do you know this is the answer that you already decided the answer to a large extent? You just want something to fill in the blanks. He's like, yeah, exactly. That's what I want. So different people use it for different things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of building machines, right? Like I've always, been more interested in platforms or things like that, right? Things that people use to then build things. And to me, like my favorite thing to do with AI is to build these kind of end-to-end systems of prompts, right? Where I go to one prompt and get the output from there, and then that's my input for next kind of prompt to get another piece of my puzzle together, and then so one example I have a few examples, but basically, you know, writing blogs, right? Like
Yeah,
obviously,
yeah,
that I use Claude projects quite a bit, and so you can define your system prompt, you can define documents in there, and then so I use the AI to create a blog writing framework, right? So
yeah.
what do I want my blogs to look like? Then I have a kind of a marketing guidelines, some key phrases, value props, and then I have a prompt that kind of orchestrates all these things, right? Just like take this subject and then use this framework and this messaging guideline, and then create the blog from that, and that kind of is producing really good quality repeatable materials, where because a lot of times it's kind of like are the problems that we solve are the same, but there's multiple combinations, right? So it's kind of this observability tool with this infrastructure component on this cloud, right? So Datadog monitoring EKS on AWS, right? And you have this type of problem, right? And then I want to write the same blog with, Splunk instead of Datadog, right? And so it's
Yeah,
great
yeah.
at that. And then what I do is I take that and then I wrote another prompt that takes these blogs and then creates a YAML file describing a what we call the chain of thought in Hawkeye, which allows us to kind of ask the right questions and get the right
Yeah, yeah.
telemetry. I get it to generate this YAML file, and then I pass the YAML file to a Python code that I created that creates a simulated investigation in Hawkeye that I can kind of demonstrate. So with this kind of machine, I can go from write a blog about image pull back off errors on EKS monitored by CloudWatch and Prometheus, and then get the output, put that in my other prompt, get the YAML file, put that YAML file through my Python code, get a bunch of JSON, load the JSON in my application, get a live demo. And I can write the blog and make the demo, and you can see them online. You know, I've published quite a few of them. I can do all this in a couple hours. Think about tech marketing, like having to write this blog, to create a demo, for this combination of technologies would have taken weeks for each blog. I can
And
knock out.
multiple different people, because sometime back, different people did these different things, right? Not everybody was an expert end to end.
Yeah, so to me, it's like that's the most fun is figuring out like, okay,
Sequence.
like the only limit you have is your imagination, and that's back to the questions thing, right? Like brilliant people I've observed are really great at imagining a conversation and then coming up with the questions that kind of make that conversation happen. So to me, like AI is this thing where your only limit really is your imagination. So and as far as like companies go, I feel like the winners are the ones that are going to be more ambitious, right? Like the most ambitious founders that have the biggest product vision are going to win because it's all becoming possible. So if you just have to dare to imagine something, so I do it in my own day to day on a small scale, but at Newbird we have this kind of big vision of how to use those question asking skills that AI has in order to kind of solve real world problems.
Let me ask you a different question. This has been on my mind. But I want to talk about our agents, which I think is the next step. But when you look at the early mid 90s when we had Google first came out, late 90s, early 2000, our keyword searches were one or two words. Then to the late 2000s, it became sentences. Now the questions, the search, let's call it a search because sometimes it's just a search, right? Like, for example, which is the best cloud observability solution for X, right? But previously it would be just cloud observability. Give me all the answers, then I have to go find it. Now it is like, I just want the goddamn answer. Here's my question. Here are the limitations for SMB businesses that are SaaS oriented that are doing this, right? So we're increasingly asking questions that are much longer and giving a little bit more context to search engines. Let's call them that right now because I don't have a better term. We can call them AI answer engines, whatever the heck they call them. That itself has changed, right? What we asked used to be a keyword or two. It went to maybe a sentence. Now it is paragraphs. So we are asking more complex things or giving a lot more context and saying, this is exactly what I want, because people are realizing the more narrow they get, the better the answers might be for a maybe specific question they're asking.
Yeah, I do think that's true, right? Like it's you have to know how to ask the question to the AI, right? And you cannot ask the AI to do five things at once. You have to ask for the first thing, then take the output, then ask for the second thing. Then,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have to be very well organized and structured. But yeah, I mean, it's a good analogy, this evolution of search engines, because basically search engines is like, oh wow, I have the world at my fingertips. There's all this internet full of knowledge and content, and Google is going to connect me to the right content. And it's always been very good at kind of determining what you're looking for very quickly. But as you're saying, now now what we're looking for is not doesn't exist as a web page that we can be linked to, or if it does, it's very rarely exactly what we're looking for. And these, you know, LLMs are effectively search engines that took what Google did a lot further by, actually reading all these things, comprehending it, and, assimilating all this knowledge, and then being able to reformulate
Sympathize.
all your answers. But the danger is that it kind of, and again, it kind of back to my point about asking the right questions. It will barrel down a rat hole very quickly and will limit what you're seeing because it's trying to answer, exactly what you want. And sometimes it knows exactly what you want, but that's the downside. So I
It's a
don't think
double-edged sword, I guess.
going anywhere, because you still need to be independent, right? Like we can't just ask for everything. Like my wife was telling me, I was sharing that I'm speaking with you, and like last time we spoke, you asked me, how I use it in my personal life, and I'm like, I don't really use it in my personal life except my daughter, right, making up stories and jokes and things like that. And she's says, "Oh, well, some people use it for travel ideas," and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't want the AI to tell me where to go. I love doing that research, first of all. Plus, I don't want a narrow path when I'm traveling. I want a big, wide world that I can explore. So it's like, to me, I stay away from this use of AI where, like, I really want to do my own research. It's a great assistant to do that, right? So it's kind of like, uh, you know, I'll find a place that I visit, and then there's like a piece of history about it, and then I can ask AI to tell me about that history or tell me about the region, or to learn. It's a great tool for that, but I don't want it to narrow down what I'm seeing.
Yeah, no, I think last time we spoke, I don't know if I mentioned it or not. I use it completely now to manage my food intake, right? I think I told you about it. I'm not
Yeah,
sure if I did. So it gives out a complete schedule. It puts it on my calendar. I've integrated it. I've created a custom GPT to integrate directly into my Google Calendar in the morning with a half an hour notification. It tells me, hey, by the way, these are the things you need to be able to have. At the beginning of the week on Saturday, it gives me an entire list. I've not figured out yet how to get it to me by aisle, but I will very soon, where I will get to the point where I can say, by this aisle, by this specific area, go down to this path, tell me what I need to pick up. That would be the ultimate. And in fact, even better, I'm just going to send it over across and then get it done that way
yeah, it should just talk to the Uber
safely.
Eats robots. I mean, have you seen those? They're in my neighborhood. There's these little boxes that
They
are
come and drop things off.
rolling around the streets and delivering things, like, yeah, this makes me think of this, like, AI talking to other AIs, right? Like, we're
Yeah,
gonna
that'll be awesome. I think
bring
agents and
a
AI
different
talking
world.
to AI will be the best. I'm hoping that
It's
comes faster than
happening.
before.
It's going to happen very quickly. I think, right now this year, agents are coming online, and we're trying to figure out, okay, well, how do you connect agents with other agents, and what's the right communication protocols? And, we're following this very closely. Like, are you familiar with MCP, Model Context
Yeah,
Protocol?
model concept protocol. Yeah,
Yeah, so for us, it's kind of a way to potentially talk to more tools, but also to other agents, and for other agents to talk to us. So, we could see a world where, there's a MCP server for Hawkeye for other agents to talk to, right? So, because we call Hawkeye like an SRE agent. Well,
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
SREs do more than root cause analysis. We're a very specialized agent in kind of investigative root cause analysis and remediation, right? But SREs have other things that they do. So maybe an SRE has another agent, and that agent delegates to our agent in the future. And maybe our agent interacts with a developer agent that, goes and fixes the bugs that we find and analyze. So this kind of idea of agents talking to agents is very interesting, and I think it's going to happen pretty quickly as, like the individual agents are getting pretty powerful. right now. They're all kind of, we're looking to hire an agent for our SDR function, right? For
Nice.
example.
That's all we need now. Awesome. Francois, this was excellent. Good first start. I'm sure we'll talk again. Uh,
Yeah,
Looking forward to continuing. Maybe in about a few months, we'll catch up again, talk about how agents are being lang chained to get everything done for us. But in the meanwhile, have a good one, and I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
yeah. Thank you, Mukund.